Released on the NES in late 1986, Ghosts N Goblins was a 1985 Capcom arcade game. Called Makaimura in Japan, the title literally translates to Demon World Village. The game was designed by prolific designer and producer Takuro Fujiwara, through whose hands almost every noteworthy Capcom home console game passed between the mid-1980s and mid-1990s. Although the game was ported to a myriad of home computer systems, this was the only home console release of the game in its day. The game begins with Sir Arthur and Princess Prin having a picnic in their local graveyard, because why wouldn't you do that? I could go for the low-hanging fruit here and point out that Sir Arthur is laying back with most of his clothes off while Prin is kneeling in front of him, but this isn't that kind of show. Satan appears out of nowhere and scoops her up, so it's time for Sir Arthur to put his armor back on and get to work. Ghosts N Goblins is an early side-scrolling action platformer on a console that would become known for the genre. The music in this first level has become one of the most recognized tracks of the era, and as is the case with the soundtrack as a whole, really dovetails nicely with the overall feel of the game. Sir Arthur starts off the game with the default javelin weapon, but can switch to others including the flame, which I've always hated, the dagger, which the game refers to as a sword, my favorite because you can machine gun them at bosses, and weapons that only seem to appear in the later levels, including the axe, and the cross. Much like Castlevania, you cannot control your jumps once in midair, which can definitely lead to unnecessary deaths if you don't think before you leap. Each level is timed, and if the timer runs out, as expected, you lose a life. However, time bonuses in the form of pinwheels can be picked up over the course of each stage. The game, and really the whole series, is known for its difficulty, and in fact an argument could be made that, among games that are generally regarded as good or worth playing, this may be the most difficult ever created. Were that not bad enough, in a move that would be repeated in the two subsequent releases in the series, Ghosts N Goblins actually has to be played through twice in order to properly finish the game. Ghosts N Goblins was the first in a trilogy of games released in the late 80s and early 90s. Ghouls N Ghosts was released into the arcades in 1988 and was ported to the Mega Drive and Genesis the following year. Super Ghouls N Ghosts was specifically developed for the Super Nintendo and was released in 1991. Additionally, the Red Devil, one of my most hated enemies in the original game, actually got his own spin-off series, and the games are all excellent in their own right. Gargoyles Quest was released for the Game Boy in 1990, and I actually got this game when it came out. This side-scrolling action-adventure hybrid gameplay was repeated in two subsequent releases, 1992's Gargoyles Quest 2 on the NES, and 1994's Demon's Crest on the Super Nintendo. Ghosts N Goblins was ported over to the Famicom and NES, uncredited, by a Japanese developer called Micronix, who also ported over other arcade games of the time. Unfortunately, the signature of Micronix's work seems to be buggy, flickery visuals. As someone who owned Ikari Warriors, Elevator Action, and Super Pitfall back in the day, I am sadly familiar with their shoddy work. Thankfully, graphics glitches aside, Ghosts N Goblins still manages to be a fun game, and even with its impossible level of difficulty, was and still is considered a must-play and one of the better games on the NES.